You're probably going to have terrible audio and video for that matter, but okay, I'm a little bit taller than he was. By the way, happy Pride Month, y'all. It is June 10th, day 2 of my sober journey. Oh, if I can get it to shine there, I'm sure you can see it. 15 men on the dead man's chest. Yo ho ho and a bottle of rum. And this is an illustrated copy. It was illustrated by N.C. Wyeth. So when I figure out a schedule for this kind of stuff, I will include pictures if there's any illustrations, in any of the read-alongs, because I'd love to do a book club. I've got gadgets and gizmos and who's it's galore. Disney kids, hello. You're weird, but I grew up on them too, so it's fine. Alright, what's that? Just the closest thing to hand. Joseph Mitchell, Up in the Old Hotel. Actually, this would be really cool. This is about New York City in the 20s, in the turn of the 20th century or 19th century. Old New York that doesn't exist anymore. This does not have illustrations. So part of the store that I'm going to do, I'll put affiliate links, or I'll get affiliate links, probably to Amazon, but I might look into alternatives, maybe 100% American manufacturing, printing, distributing. Let's lead by example, right? So I'm sober Dennis. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I have bipolar disorder. And tonight we're going to stay sober with a chapter from Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island. Part 1, The Old Buccaneer. Chapter 1, The Old Sea Dog at the Admiral Benbow. There's the... Oh, you can't see that at all, but I'll hold it way over here. Somebody can enhance. And I'll put it on my X. Handle is Sober Dennis. Everything's going to be Sober Dennis until I start the sober group. And we'll get all you guys involved as well once that happens. It's got like maps and stuff on it. I love maps. I'm a sucker for maps. I got the United States right here next to me because I have really bad visual, like object permanence problems. If I can't see it, I completely forget about it. Like I have a clock over there, a clock on my hand, an alarm clock right here on my table, an alarm clock on my phone, and another alarm clock in another room somewhere else. And I'm still late to everything. So, let's stay sober. Chapter 1, The Old Sea Dog at the Admiral Benbow. Squire Trelawney, Dr. Livesey, and the rest of these gentlemen, having asked me to write down the whole particulars about Treasure Island, from the beginning to the end, keeping nothing back but the bearings of the island, and that only because there is still treasure not yet lifted. I take up my pen in the year of grace 17 and go back to the time when my father kept the Admiral Benbow Inn, and the brown old seaman, with the saber cut, first took up his lodging under our roof. I remember him as if it were yesterday, as he came plodding to the inn door, his sea chest following behind him in a hand barrel. A tall, strong, heavy, nut-brown man, his tarry pigtail falling over the shoulders of his soiled blue coat, his hands ragged and scarred with black broken nails, and the saber cut across one cheek, a dirty, livid white. I remember him looking around the cove and whistling to himself as he did so, then breaking out in that old sea song that he sang so often afterwards. "15 men on the dead man's chest, yo-ho-ho, and a bottle of rum." In the high, old, tottering voice that seemed to have been tuned and broken at the capstan bars. Then he rapped on the door with a bit of stick, like a handspike that he carried. And when my father appeared, called roughly for a glass of rum. This, when it was brought to him, he drank slowly, like a connoisseur, lingering on the taste, and still looking about him at the cliffs and up at our signboard. "This is a handy cove," says he, at length, "and a pleasant situated grog shop. Much company, mate?" My father told him no, very little company. The more was the pity. "Well then," said he, "this is the berth for me. Here, you, matey," he cried to the man who trundled the barrow. "Bring up alongside and help up my chest. I'll stay here a bit," he continued. "I'm a plain man. Rum and bacon and eggs is what I want. And that head up there for to watch ships off. What you might call me? You might call me Captain." "Oh, I see what you're at there." And he threw down 3 or 4 gold pieces on the threshold. "You can tell me when I've worked that through," says he, looking fierce as a commander. And indeed, bad as his clothes were, as coarsely as he spoke, he had none of the appearance of a man who sailed before the mast, but seemed like a mate or skipper, accustomed to be obeyed or to strike. The man who came with the barrow told us the mail had set him down the morning before at the Royal George, that he'd inquired what inns there were along the coast, and hearing ours well spoken of, I suppose, and described as lonely, had chosen it from among the others for his place of residence. And that was all we could learn of our guest. He was a very silent man by custom. All day he hung round the cove or upon the cliffs with a brass telescope. All evening he sat in a corner of the parlor next the fire and drank rum and water very strong. Mostly he would not speak when spoken to, only look up sudden and fierce, and blow through his nose like a foghorn, and we and the people who came about our house soon learned to let him be. Every day when he came back from his stroll, he'd ask if any seafaring men had gone by along the road. At first we thought it was the want of company of his own kind that made him ask this question, but at last we began to see he was desirous to avoid them. When a seaman put up at the Admiral Benbow, as now and then some did, making by the coast road for Bristol, he would look in at him through the curtained door before he entered the parlor, and he was always sure to be as silent as a mouse when any such was present. For me, at least, there was no secret about the matter, for I was, in a way, a sharer in his alarms. He had taken me aside one day and promised me a silver 4-penny on the first of every month if I would only keep my weather eye open for a seafaring man with one leg, and let him know the moment that he appeared. Often enough, when the first of the month came round and I applied him for my wage, he would only blow through his nose at me and stare me down. But before the week was out, he was sure to think better of it, bring me my 4-penny piece, and repeat his orders to look out for the seafaring man with one leg. Oh, there's a picture of him. You maybe can't see it. That's all that. This, how that personage haunted my dreams, I need scarcely tell you. On stormy nights when the wind shook the four corners of the house and the surf roared along the cove and up the cliffs, I would see him in 1,000 forms and with 1,000 diabolical expressions. Now the leg would be cut off at the knee, now at the hip. Now he was a monstrous kind of creature who had never had but the one leg, and that in the middle of his body. To see him leap and run and pursue me over hedge and ditch was the worst of nightmares. And although altogether I paid pretty dear for my monthly 4-penny piece in the shape of these abominable fancies. But though I was so terrified by the idea of the seafaring man with one leg, I was far less afraid of the captain himself than anybody else who knew him. There were nights when he took a deal more rum and water than his head would carry, and then he would sometimes sit and sing his wicked old sea songs, minding nobody, but sometimes he'd call for glasses round and force all the trembling company to listen to his stories or bear a chorus to his singing. Often I've heard the house shaking with yo-ho-ho and a bottle of rum, all the neighbors joining in for dear life, with the fear of death upon him, and each singing louder than the other to avoid remark. For in these fits he was the most overriding companion ever known. He would slap his hand on the table for silence all round. He would fly up in a passion of anger at a question, or sometimes none was put, or sometimes because none was put. And so he judged the company was not following his story. Nor would he allow anyone to leave the inn till he had drunk himself sleepy and reeled off to bed. His stories were what frightened people worst of all. Dreadful stories they were, about hanging, and walking the plank, and storms at sea, and the dry Tortugas, and wild deeds and places on the Spanish Main. By his own account, he must have lived his life among some of the wickedest men that God ever allowed upon the sea, and the language in which he told these stories shocked our plain country people almost as much as the crimes that he described. My father was always saying the inn would be ruined, for people would soon cease coming there to be tyrannized over and put down and sent shivering to their beds. But I really believe his presence did us good. People were frightened at the time, but on looking back, they rather liked it. It was a fine excitement in a quiet country life. And there was even a party of the younger men who pretended to admire him, calling him a true sea dog and a real old salt and such like names, and saying there was the sort of man that made England terrible at sea. In one way, indeed, he bade fair to ruin us, for he kept on that staying week after week, and at last month after month, so that all the money had been long exhausted. Still my father never plucked up the heart to insist on having more. If ever he mentioned it, the captain blew through his nose so loudly that you might say he roared, and stared my poor father out of the room. I've seen him wringing his hands after such a rebuff, and I'm sure the annoyance and the terror he lived in must have greatly hastened his early and unhappy death. All the time he lived with us, the captain made no change whatever in his dress but to buy some stockings from a hawker. One of the cocks of his hat having fallen down, he let it hang from that day forth, though it was a great annoyance when it blew. I remember the appearance of his coat, which he patched himself upstairs in his room, and which, before the end, was nothing but patches. He never wrote or received a letter, and he never spoke with any but the neighbors, and with these, for the most part, only when drunk on rum. The great sea chest none of us had ever seen open. He was only once crossed, and that was towards the end, when my poor father was far gone in a decline that took him off. Dr. Livesey came one afternoon to see the patient, took a bit of dinner from my mother, and went into the parlor to smoke a pipe until his horse should come down from the hamlet, for we had no stabling at the old Benbow. I followed him in, and I remember observing the contrast. The neat, bright doctor, with his powder as white as snow, and his bright black eyes and pleasant manners made with the coltish country folk, and above all with that filthy, heavy, bleared scarecrow of a pirate of ours, sitting far gone in rum, with his arms on the table. Suddenly he, the captain, that is, began to pipe up his eternal song. 15 men on the dead man's chest, yo-ho-ho and a bottle of rum. Drink for the devil and none for the rest, yo-ho-ho and a bottle of rum. Oh, the line's actually drink and the devil had done for the rest, yo-ho-ho and a bottle of rum. At first I had supposed the dead man's chest to be that identical big box of his upstairs in the front room, and the thought had been mingled in my nightmares with that of the one-legged seafaring man. But by this time we had all along ceased to pay any particular notice to the song. It was new that night, to nobody but Dr. Livesey, and on him I observed it did not produce an agreeable effect, for he looked up for a moment quite angrily before he went on with his talk to old Taylor, the gardener, on a new cure for the rheumatics. In the meantime, the captain gradually brightened up at his own music, and at last flapped his hand upon the table before him in a way we all knew to mean silence. The voices stopped at once, all but Dr. Livesey's. He went on as before, speaking clear and kind, and drawing briskly at his pipe between every word or two. The captain glared at him for a while, flapping his hand again, glared still harder, and at last broke out with a villainous low oath. "Silence there, below decks!" "Were you addressing me, sir?" says the doctor, and when the ruffian had told him with another oath that this was so, "I've only one thing to say to you, sir," replies the doctor, "that if you keep on drinking rum, the world will soon be quit of a very dirty scoundrel." The old fellow's fury was awful. He sprang to his feet, drew and opened a sailor's clasp knife, and balancing it open on the palm of his hand, threatened to pin the doctor to the wall. The doctor never so much as moved. He spoke to him as before over his shoulder, and in the same tone of voice, rather high so that all the room might hear, but perfectly calm and steady. "If you do not put that knife this instant in your pocket, I promise, upon my honor, you shall hang at next assizes." Then followed a battle of looks between them. But the captain soon knuckled under, put up his weapon, and resumed his seat, grumbling like a beaten dog. "And now, sir," continued the doctor, "since I now know there's such a fellow in my district, you may count I'll have an eye upon you day and night. I'm not a doctor only, I'm a magistrate, and if I catch a breath of complaint against you, if it's only for a piece of incivility like tonight's, I'll take effectual means to have you hunted down and routed out of this. Let that suffice." Soon after, Dr. Livesey's horse came to the door, and he rode away, but the captain held his peace that evening, and for many evenings to come. Next up is Chapter 2, called Black Dog Appears and Disappears. I will post the illustrations that have been covered so far, and I will create a schedule with the rest of the chapters, and we will do our best to hold to that schedule. Maybe an evening event like this, maybe sometimes pre-recorded, maybe live. Check out the Reddit, r/sober. That's spelled 5OB3R. Yeah, left-handed, it's not my forte either. But again, r/5OB3, not E, 3R. 5OB3R. And the website, coming soon, soberlife.com, spelt the same way. And I know people are going to ask, it's sober, but why is it all fucked up? Why is it all weird? Why is it hard to read? Why is it hard to spell? Because it's hard to be sober, so it should be hard to read. I can't do it alone. I need you guys to help me be sober. Like, if I'm not right here talking to you, I don't know what else I'm gonna do. So tonight we're gonna stay sober. I think I'm gonna keep this video going a little bit longer and talk a little bit about that chapter because I'm still not tired and it's 2:40 in the morning. So I'll make a long one. I'll have stuff to cut down. This is my life now. I made a post on my personal Facebook page, and like I have bipolar disorder, right? So like I'm currently on the high side of what I deal with. So I got real excited, and everything I'm doing right now is all in the moment, willy-nilly. And as I announced this sober project to my friends and family, I wasn't even really thinking about it, and I wrote down, Dennis Erdman is dead. He drank himself to death. Sober Dennis, that's me, that's this, wants to help the world get sober. So, get sober with me. Let's be sober together. I need your help to get sober. And I'll talk a little bit more about the book now. Right here after the table of contents and the list of plates, because it has a list of the illustration engravings there through the book, there's another little addendum. It says, to the hesitating purchaser, if sailor tales to sailor tunes, storm and adventure, heat and cold, if schooners, islands, and maroons, and buccaneers and buried gold, and all the old romance retold, exactly in the ancient way, can please as me they pleased of old, the wiser youngsters of today. So be it, and fall on. If not, if studious youth no longer crave, his ancient appetites forgot, Kingston, or Ballantyne the brave, or Cooper of the wood and wave, so be it also, and may all my pirates share the grave where these and their creations lie. I don't know if that was Robert Louis Stevenson or if that was added in later. Who published this? Barnes & Noble. The other night I was having a bad relapse. My dad was sitting in the room with me, and he was helping me calm down. And he said, "Do you want me to read a book to you?" Because he had done it before. Because it's kind of like having your favorite YouTuber talking to you, but it's a little bit more intimate. And I was like, "No, let me read one. But you pick it. You pick the book." And so he went to my shelf and he picked this, Treasure Island. And I jumped in somewhere in the middle and just started reading because it's Treasure Island. If you've seen Muppet Treasure Island or Treasure Planet, oh, best movie ever. Then you know the story about X marks the spot, buried treasure, and they overthrow spoilers. Yeah, spoilers on Treasure Island. But I haven't read it in a while, and if that's not God, if that's not the universe, if that's not my higher power, if that's not you and the intentions of all the people that are hurting, coincidences follow me everywhere. Like, I can't, it happens too often for it to just be coincidences, right? So I'm here not even 3 hours into my day 2 as sober Dennis. Like, the first thing that I think to do when I can't sleep is, well, I'm going to read a book so I can just get bored. Okay, that's content. Cool. Key into what this channel is going to be. It's just going to be me getting sober with your help. And you getting sober with your help. Because as I was reading that description of, what's his name? The old sea dog. Does he not get a name? Did I just read it? I couldn't tell you right now. He says he says you might call me Captain. But anyway, you hear a part about how the guy would get drunk and be the life of the party and make all his friends the people near him. He scared them into participating in his singing and gallivanting when he was too drunk. He didn't talk to people. He was paranoid. That old sea dog was one of us. And maybe if he'd gotten sober, then the world would have lost out on a really good story. But to all you sea dogs, young and old, they, them, je, jer, glee, glur, you, me, he, her, she, him, everybody. Everybody can suffer. But nobody has to suffer alone. Sober life, sober community, sober resources. If you guys get on board, we're going to change the world. All right. Tomorrow, room tour. You get to see what moving 2 times in one 12-month period across the country does to your stuff. Also, being unemployed, having no income, and living with your parents. It's going to be a hell of a ride, guys. So come on, get sober with me. Let's get sober together. Let's stay sober together. Oh, and please, please, like, comment, subscribe so that I can sleep. Make my worries go away so that I can get some sleep and check in a little later on day 2.